Okay, so today we're starting a new topic, and the topic is scale drawings. But in order to get into scale drawings, we're going to have to do a bit of revision of ratios because they're used quite heavily in scale drawings. So the important thing to remember with ratios is that we're comparing two units that are in two amounts that are in the same units. So mils with mils, or litres with litres, or kilos with kilos. So it's not like rates where we were comparing things with different units of measurement, and they're in a definite order. So you might have heard of a fuel mix being 25:1 for like a chainsaw or something like that, or a lawnmower. That means 25 parts of fuel to every 1 part of oil. You wouldn't want to get that mixed around and put 25 parts of oil and 1 part of fuel. It's not going to be so good for your mower. We can get equivalent ratios by multiplying and dividing each term in the ratio by the same number. And each of the numbers in the ratio are called its terms. So just to start off with getting some information started, we've got a ratio of dog to cat owners in a group of 10 friends, where 7 people have dogs and 3 have cats. So to express that as a ratio, this one's rather simple. We're just going to go, and I'll get myself my pen up, sorry. We're just going to go 7 is to 3. Okay. Now, for the next question, we've got 17 minutes as a ratio of 1 hour. Now, obviously, that's minutes, that's hours. I can't use both. So I'm going to actually say, well, an hour, that just equals 60 minutes. And that'll make things a little bit easier. So that means I can write that ratio as 17 is to 60. Okay. For the next one, obviously, I've got 5 kilos to 100 grams of flour. Once again, I'm going to look at this 5 kilos and I'm going to say I want that in grams instead. So 5 kilos in grams would be 5,000 grams. And then I can express the other side of the ratio because it's already in grams. So 5,000 is to 100. Now, clearly, I can simplify that ratio, but I'll deal with that just a little bit down the page when we deal with that. So just as a half and 2/4 are the same, if I have a half a pizza and someone else has 2/4, we both have the same amount of pizza. So just as those are the same, a ratio of 1 is to 2 and a ratio of 2 is to 4 are equivalent. But it is important to note that a half and 1 is to 2 are not the same thing. A half expressed as a ratio is 1 is to 1, because if I've got a half of something, then my side is worth the same amount as the other side. So a ratio of 1 is to 2 is actually a third and 2/3, because there's 3 parts and you've got 1 on one side and 2 on the other side. Okay. So to find an equivalent ratio, that should say that it's a bit of a spelling error there. That N shouldn't be there. To find an equivalent ratio, we can simply multiply and divide by the same number. So if I wanted to expand a ratio of 3 is to 4 by multiplying it by 5, I'm going to have to multiply both terms individually by 5. So 3 times 5 is 15, 4 times 5 is 20. And just as that works for multiplication, it also works for division. So if I've got a ratio of 64 is to 16, it looks like I've divided that there by 8, because 16's gone down to 2. So if I've divided that side by 8, I need to divide this side by 8 as well. 64 divided by 8, well, that's going to be 8. Now, clearly we can see that that could be simplified even further, down to 4 is to 1, but I'll deal with that here. Okay, so simplified ratio has no common factors and all the terms of the ratio are whole numbers. So we get rid of fractions and we get rid of decimals. So just the first one there is nice and simple. If it's 8 is to 12, I can see that 4 goes into both those numbers. So if I divide 8 by 4 and if I divide 12 by 4, I'll get my simpler ratio. So 8 divided by 4 is 2, 12 divided by 4 is 3. There's no more common factors left. That's that ratio simplified. Now, in a situation like this one, the best way to get rid of the fractions is much like we did with algebra. To get rid of a fraction, we'll just multiply both sides by the denominator of the fraction. So if I multiply this side by 4 and I multiply this side by 4, just as a first step, these two 4's are going to cancel each other out. I'm going to be left with 3 is to 8. 2 times 4 is 8 over 5. Now I can get rid of this 5 on this side. So if I multiply that by 5 and I multiply that by 5, I'm going to end up with 15 is to 8 because those two 5s will cancel each other out. Okay, 15 is to 8. I can't simplify that any. There's no common factors left, so that's the answer to that one. So just with the fractions, multiply by your denominators and it'll work out. Now, 1.5 hours to 35 minutes, what I'm probably going to do there is I'm going to say, well, 1.5 hours, well, that just equals 90 minutes, doesn't it? So I'll say 90 is to 35. And I could look at that and say, well, 5 clearly goes into both those numbers, so I'll start there. 5 goes into 35 7 times, that's nice and easy. And it goes into 90. Well, I could use my calculator, but I suppose 5 goes into 120 times, and this is 2 times less than that. So I'm going to say 18, and hello, it's just disappeared on me. 18 is to 7. And I don't think there's any more common factors there, so that's as simple as I can make that one. The next one over here, we've got a half a kilo is to 200 grams. Well, a half a kilo is going to be 500 grams. So let's just first get it as a ratio in the same units. And I can see that right here, I can divide both of those by 100, and I'm going to end up with a ratio of 5 is to 2. In this next one, I've got 3 terms, but the same process applies as long as it's a common factor across all of them. So I can see that 15 is a factor of both 15 and 30, but it's not a factor of 40. And I can't use 10. It looks to me like 5 is going to be the best I can use. So 40 divided by 5, well, that's just going to be 8. 15 divided by 5 is going to be 3, and 30 divided by 5 is going to be 6. So although some numbers share common factors, there's no longer a common factor shared across all 3. So that's as simple as I can make that one. When I've got decimals, probably the easiest thing, unless we've got recurring decimals, is just to multiply and to get rid of the decimals. So if I multiply both of these by 10, I'm going to end up with 2 is to 18. And from there, it's really simple to say, well, that's an even number. We'll divide it by 2 and we'll divide the other side by 2 because it's an even number as well. And I get a fraction of 1 is to 9. Not fraction, sorry, a ratio. Now, with ratio problems, often you'll use the unitary method or something like that. So if we've got a sum of money was shared between Peter, Paul and Mary in the ratio of 2 is to 1 is to 3, with Mary receiving $381. So Mary got 3 shares and that was $381. So to find out, so if, oops, I'll just cross that out, 3 shares equals 381. So 1 share is just that 381 divided by 3, which in this case we can use the calculator and we're going to get, just move that over the side a little bit. So 381 divided by 3 equals 127. Okay, let's click there. So 127, probably should have put a dollar sign at the front. So 127 is how much one share is, but Peter didn't receive 1 share, he received 2 shares. So for 2 shares, we can just say, well, that's just going to be that $127. Oops. I'll just get the old eraser out and fix that up. So $127 times by 2, which is going to equal $254. Okay, so we can finish off with a little statement saying, therefore, Peter got $254. For the next question, we've already, by working out what 1 share was, well, that's how much Paul got. We already know Mary got $381. So to work out how much money was shared altogether, we've just got the amount that they all got. So we've got that 381 that Mary got, plus the 254 that we just worked out for Peter, I think that was. And we also worked out that 1 share, which is what Paul got, is 127. So I can just add all those 3 figures up. I'll use my calculator for that. So 381 plus 254 plus 127, and it should probably work out to be double 381, which is 762, which is right. So that's worked out nice for us. So $762. Okay, moving right along. A concrete mix contains cement, sand and gravel in the ratio 1:4:6. How many shovelfuls of sand are needed in a mix containing 3 shovelfuls of cement? So cement's what 1 unit is. So if I start with 3 shovelfuls of cement is 1, sand needs to be that middle one. So I need 3 times by, so 3 shovelfuls of cement we put in, so I need 4 times as much. So that's the 3 shovelfuls we put in of cement, but we need 4 times that much in sand. So that's just going to equal 12 shovels. Okay. If 2.2 tonne of gravel are used to make some concrete mix, how many kilograms of sand have used? So 2.2 tonne equals 6 shares in this case, because gravel is the largest. So if we take 2.2 tonnes, I'm going to actually change that to kilos, because 2.2 tonnes, when I start dividing it by 6, is going to get rather big decimals going on. So 2,200 kilograms divided by 6 is going to tell us what 1 share is. So once again, I'll plug that into my calculator. 2,200 divided by 6 equals, so 366.6 repeater. I'll just lose this thing here to say that's recurring. So that's how many kilograms of sand are used, because sand was 1 share. All right. Obviously, it'd be different if I was trying to work out. Oh no, sorry, that's not quite right. Sorry. So that's how much sand is used. But to find out 4 shares, I need to go 366.6 repeater times by 4 will give me the total amount of sand. Oops, sand. So if I put that into my calculator, now I've still got that up on my calculator, so I can just hit times by 4 equals, and I'm going to get 1466.6 repeating. I'll go to 1 decimal place and round it there. Okay. Now, what have I got left? This is the last question, so I've probably got just enough time. The 3 sides of a triangle are in the ratio 2:3:4, and the longest side of the triangle is 16.2 millimeters. What is the perimeter? So to work out the perimeter, we're going to know how much. We're going to have to know how big all the sides are. So if 16.2 millimeters equals 4 shares, so 1 share equals 16.2 divided by 4. All right, so we'll plug that into the calculator. 16.2 divided by 4, and we get 4.05. So that's how much 1 share is worth. Now there's another way we can do this now. We can say, well, if 1 share is worth 4.05, I've got 2 shares plus 3 shares plus 4 shares. So 2 plus 3 is 5 plus 4 is 9. So 9 shares is going to be everything all added up. We could do it the other way and work out, what 2 shares is and what 3 shares is and what 4 shares is and add them together. But I'm going to say, well, total perimeter equals 9 shares, which is therefore 9 times by 4.05. And then if we plug that into our calculator, 9 times by 4.05, well, that equals 36.45. Now we've been given a distance, so we'll need to give the units for that, and that's going to be millimeters for the perimeter. Okay, so that brings us to the end. I've obviously spelt perimeter there wrong. Sorry about that. So have a crack at the questions. I'll be back on Friday and we'll hook into more work. See you then.